Man, it's honestly scary when you realize this. Many of the games on this list were made with smaller budgets, less technology, and virtually no modern assistance. Yet they still delivered what many current productions are missing: strong creative direction, a clear identity, and above all, respect for the player. They didn't rely on tricks to keep you playing. The experience spoke for itself, and that's exactly why they're still relevant today. If you haven't played some of them yet, consider this your warning. These aren't just good games, they're must-play experiences you need to play as soon as possible. Portal 2 is hard to put into words just how perfect Portal 2 is, even 15 years later. Valve achieved something we rarely see, a sequel that expands every single inch of the original without losing its essence. What makes this game mandatory even today isn't just the portal mechanic, which remains one of the most brilliant ideas in the industry, but its writing. GLaDOS's biting humor, Wheatley's clumsy personality, and the tragic story of Cave Johnson create a narrative that hooks you through sheer charisma. The level design is a masterclass in how to teach complex mechanics to the player without relying on boring tutorials or bright arrows on the screen. Every puzzle you solve gives you a genuine hit of dopamine because the game respects your intelligence. On top of that, the cooperative mode is, to this day, one of the best experiences to play with a friend, demanding a level of synchronization that few games have managed to replicate. Visually, it has aged like fine wine thanks to the clean art direction of the Source engine. If you've never played it, you're missing what many consider the definitive puzzle game, a work that proves you don't need 100-hour open world to deliver an unforgettable experience.
You are not alone. All Aperture Science personality constructs will...
The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings. Before the phenomenon of the third game, CD Projekt Red delivered Assassins of Kings, an RPG that puts many modern titles to shame when it comes to real consequences. This is not a choose ending A or B game. Here, a decision made in the first act can completely change the entire second chapter, taking you to locations and missions you would never even see if you had chosen differently. It's a mature, political, and brutal game. Geralt here is a rougher character, trying to clear his name in a world where no one is purely good or evil. The combat is challenging and demands that you prepare with potions and oils before each fight, bringing that authentic feeling of truly being a monster hunter. Visually, the game was a beast for its time and still impresses today with the density of its forests and the detailed design of its armor and creatures. If you loved The Witcher 3 but ignored the second game, you're missing the political foundation of the story and some of the best written quests in the franchise. It's a dense, focused RPG that respects the player's time by delivering a truly branching narrative. Fallout New Vegas. Many fans state with absolute certainty this is the best Fallout of the 3D era, and they're absolutely right. Developed by Obsidian, New Vegas took the foundation of Fallout 3 and injected it with a level of RPG depth the series has never reached again. What makes this game essential today is its absolute freedom. You are a courier left for dead in the Mojave Desert, and how you choose to deal with that is entirely up to you. Want to join a Roman-style dictatorship? You can. Want to help a bureaucratic democracy? You can. Want to betray everyone and rule Vegas on your own? The game lets you. The reputation system and branching dialogue paths are so complex that each playthrough feels unique. There are no narrative invisible walls. If you want to kill an important character, the game adapts. The writing is sharp, packed with dark humor and moral dilemmas that make you stop and think for minutes before clicking a dialogue option. Even with its dated graphics, the immersion provided by the Mojave is something many modern games with limitless budgets still can't touch.
It is the pinnacle of choice and consequence storytelling in an open world.
Batman Arkham City. Rocksteady took the claustrophobic perfection of Arkham Asylum and exploded it into an open world that remains the best representation of the Dark Knight in video games. Arkham City is a love letter to the comics. The free-flow combat system reached its peak here, rhythmic, visceral, and incredibly satisfying. But what truly makes this game a must-play, even 15 years later, is the density of Gotham. Every alley, every building, and every side mission is overflowing with Batman lore. Facing the Rogues Gallery, from the Joker to Mr. Freeze, in one of the greatest boss fights of all time, is an experience that never gets old. Traversing the city using the cape and grapnel is fluid and makes you feel both the weight and agility of the hero. The main story has relentless pacing and ends with one of the boldest cliffhangers in media history. It's a polished game with superb art direction that hides the limitations of its era and delivers an atmosphere of crime and despair that no other superhero game has managed to replicate with such mastery. Dead Space 2. If the first game introduced us to horror, Dead Space 2 introduced us to absolute panic. What Visceral Games accomplished here in 2011 is a case study in how to create a perfect sequel. Isaac Clarke evolves from a silent protagonist into a broken man, suffering from dementia-induced hallucinations as he tries to survive a necromorph outbreak on the Sprawl space station. What makes this game essential today is its impeccable pacing. It gives you no respite. The atmosphere is built through a sound design that makes you question every noise in the ventilation ducts. The strategic dismemberment combat remains one of the most satisfying in the industry. Shooting for the head won't help. You need to tear the creatures apart, and that demands surgical precision in the middle of chaos. Visually, the game puts many modern horror titles to shame. The dynamic lighting, spark effects, and zero-gravity sections are executed with a level of polish that borders on perfection. Isaac's journey is visceral and claustrophobic, culminating in a climax that tests not only your skill with the plasma cutter, but also your sanity. It's an action survival horror that defines the genre's standard and proves that with powerful art direction, fear never ages. Alan Wake. Remedy has always been a master of storytelling, but with Alan Wake, they created something that feels like a perfect blend of a Stephen King novel and an episode of Twin Peaks. You step into the role of a best-selling writer who travels to the quiet town of Bright Falls in an attempt to cure his creative block, only to see his own horror manuscripts come to life. What makes this game a must-play even 15 years later is its core mechanic of light versus darkness. Light isn't just aesthetic, it's your only defense. You must use your flashlight to weaken the dark presence before you can fire a single bullet. This dynamic creates constant tension, where the batteries for your flashlight are just as valuable as the ammunition for your revolver. The episodic structure, complete with narrative cliffhangers and previously on recaps, keeps the player glued to the screen. The setting in the forests of the Pacific Northwest is dense and oppressive, with the wind swaying the trees in a way that makes you feel like the environment itself is an enemy. It's a psychological thriller with a unique identity, one that respects the player's intelligence and delivers one of the richest and most mysterious atmospheres ever seen in video games. Red Dead Redemption. Before the giant that was the second game, the original Red Dead Redemption delivered the definitive story about the end of the Old West.
John Marston is not just a gunslinger, he's a man trying to bury his criminal past to save his family, and that motivation gives the game an emotional weight that few open worlds manage to achieve. What makes this game a necessary experience today is its elegant simplicity. The map is vast, yet it never feels empty or artificial. Long rides through the desert at sunset, accompanied by a soundtrack that feels straight out of a Sergio Leone film, create deep immersion. The introduction of Mexico and the transition to the frozen mountains showcase a variety of biomes that Rockstar mastered like no one else. The Deadeye system turns gunfights into cinematic spectacles, and the side missions, known as Strangers, bring the dark humor and sharp social commentary that are the company's trademark. The ending of this game is possibly one of the boldest and most impactful in the entire history of media, leaving a permanent mark on the player. If you've only played the sequel, you need to go back and see how the legend of John Marston truly ends, or rather, how it all began.
Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Many consider this the pinnacle of the franchise, and it's easy to see why. Brotherhood took everything that worked in Assassin's Creed 2 and refined it to a level of excellence that Ubisoft has never managed to replicate with the same soul. Here, Ezio Auditore is already a master assassin, and the city of Rome is his playground. What makes this game vital even 15 years later is the recruitment system. You are no longer a lone wolf, you build a brotherhood. Calling in your assassins to eliminate a target from a rooftop and a rain of arrows is one of the most empowering sensations in the series. Exploring Rome with the ability to rebuild the city and invest in local commerce provides a sense of progression and purpose that modern games, often cluttered with generic map icons, frequently fail to deliver. Combat is fluid, fast, and focused on brutal counterattacks that make you feel Ezio's evolution. On top of that, the Da Vinci's War Machines missions bring a gameplay variety that keeps the pacing consistently high. It's a complete, polished game with such a strong visual identity that you can almost feel the Italian sun on your skin. It's the definitive example of how a sequel should expand its universe and mechanics without losing focus on the narrative.
Crysis 2. If the first game was a technical experiment, Crysis 2 is where Crytek proved it could deliver a cinematic spectacle without sacrificing tactical freedom. Moving from tropical jungles to the concrete jungle of an alien-invaded New York City, the game introduced a level of verticality that was unprecedented for shooters at the time. What makes it a must-play experience even 15 years later is the versatility of the Nanosuit 2.0. The game doesn't tell you how to play, it gives you the tools, cloaking, armor, and super strength, and lets you decide whether you want to be an invisible predator on the rooftops or a human tank charging down Fifth Avenue. Visually, it remains absurdly impressive. The global illumination, dust particles, and detailed destruction of buildings show that CryEngine was decades ahead of any competing technology. It's a dense game, with a combat rhythm that demands quick thinking and rewards creativity. Unlike modern shooters that feel like they're on rails, here the city is your playground of destruction, and every firefight feels like a big-budget action movie where you're the director.
Halo Reach. This was Bungie's farewell to the franchise they created, and they delivered nothing less than a melancholic masterpiece. Halo Reach stands apart from every other entry because here you know defeat is inevitable. You're playing the story of a fall. What makes this game essential today is the weight of its narrative and the perfection of its combat sandbox. You are not the Master Chief, you are part of Noble Team, and each member has a personality that makes you genuinely care about their fate. Combat represents the peak of Bungie's formula. The artificial intelligence of the elites remains superior to almost anything we see today, forcing you to flank, use grenades, and constantly swap weapons. The variety of missions, ranging from space battles to massive ground engagements with vehicles, keeps the experience consistently engaging. Visually, the gritty, realistic art direction gives the game a unique identity, making the sacrifice of reach felt in every single pixel. It's an emotional, technically impeccable title that serves as the perfect closing chapter to a golden era of FPS games.
BioShock 2. Often overshadowed by the brilliance of the first game, BioShock 2 is actually the entry that pushed the franchise's gameplay refinement to its limit. Here, you take on the role of Subject Delta, a Big Daddy prototype, and this shift in perspective changes everything. What makes this game vital today is the fluidity of its combat. You can now use plasmids and weapons simultaneously, creating devastating combos that simply weren't possible in the original. The story, centered on a father-daughter relationship within an even more decayed and claustrophobic Rapture, carries genuine emotional weight and raises philosophical questions about collectivism that are just as deep as those in the first game. The Little Sister defense sequences are tense and demand strategic planning with traps, adding a fresh tactical layer to exploration. Rapture remains one of the most immersive settings in video games, and its Art Deco direction, corroded by the sea, continues to be a visual feast. If you dismiss this title as just a sequel, you're missing the best combat system in the trilogy and one of the saddest and most human stories in the entire series.
Deus Ex: Human Revolution. In a world saturated with promises of a cyberpunk future, Human Revolution delivered the definitive vision back in 2011. You play as Adam Jensen, a security officer who is turned into a superhuman against his will, and the game dives deep into the ethical debate surrounding transhumanism. What makes it a must-play today is its immersive sim-style level design. Each mission can be approached in 4 or 5 different ways. You can hack systems, become a stealthy ghost in ventilation shafts, rely on your silver tongue in complex dialogue, or simply go in guns blazing with your combat augmentations. The gold and black world created by Eidos Montreal has such a strong visual identity that you can recognize the game in any single frame. Hub cities like Detroit and Hengsha are dense and packed with stories hidden in emails and back-alley conversations. It's an action RPG that respects your freedom of choice and tackles complex themes with a maturity we rarely see today. It makes you feel the consequences of being augmented in a world that fears you, delivering a level of immersion that few games have even come close to since. Mass Effect 2. Many consider Mass Effect 2 the pinnacle of science fiction RPGs, and for an excellent reason. It's Ocean's 11 in space. What makes this game essential even 15 years later is its absolute focus on characters. The structure of recruiting a team of specialists for a suicide mission creates an emotional bond that few games manage to replicate. Each loyalty mission is a masterclass in storytelling, exploring the traumas, cultures, and moral dilemmas of complex alien races. Combat was completely refined compared to the first game, becoming a dynamic and satisfying cover-based shooter where the use of biotic and technological powers flows seamlessly. But the true ace up its sleeve is the final suicide mission. In it, every decision you made, every upgrade you installed on the Normandy, and every conversation you had with your crew determines who lives and who dies. It's a game of choices with real, immediate consequences, delivered with a level of cinematic polish that still feels modern today. If you want to understand what makes an RPG truly memorable, you need to lead Commander Shepard on this journey through the Omega Relay.
The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. There is no list of essential games that doesn't pass through the frozen mountains of Skyrim. Released in 2011, this title redefined the concept of freedom in an open world. What makes it a must-play today isn't just its scale, but its sense of organic discovery. You step out of a cave, look at the horizon, and know you can go to any point you see, and along the way, you'll probably be sidetracked by a dozen other adventures. Character progression, based on what you actually do rather than on generic experience points, makes your journey truly unique. Want to be a battle mage wearing heavy armor, or a thief who masters the bow and arrow? The game gives you the tools and never judges you. The atmosphere, driven by Jeremy Soul's epic soundtrack and the roar of dragons, creates an immersion that makes you lose track of time. Even with the passing years and hundreds of new RPGs, Skyrim remains the ultimate comfort game for players, a world where there's always something new to discover beneath the glow of the Northern Lights.
Place where they found the lady. It overlooks Sunset Boulevard.
L.A. Noire. We close the list with a title that was both a technological and narrative miracle. L.A. Noire is the definitive experience of being a detective in a Hollywood noir film. Set in 1947 Los Angeles, the game uses motion scan technology to capture actors' facial expressions with a level of detail that, bizarrely, still surpasses 90% of games released today. What makes this game vital even 15 years later is its interrogation mechanic. You must read suspects' micro-expressions to decide whether they are lying, withholding information, or telling the truth. The recreation of the city, the smoky jazz soundtrack, and cases based on real crimes of the era create a dense and immersive atmosphere. It's a game that values patience, observation, and player commitment, rather than just fast reflexes. Cole Phelps's journey from war hero to a detective seeking justice in a corrupt city is one of the most mature and raw stories of the Rockstar era. It's a unique work that never received a sequel or a true equal, making it a piece of video game history that everyone needs to experience. Going through these 15 games makes you realize that the industry reached a level of creativity and polish 15 years ago that, in many ways, still hasn't been surpassed. These titles didn't have aggressive microtransactions, didn't rely on day one patches just to be playable, and didn't use artificial intelligence to fill empty maps. But this is my list, based on what I believe shaped the way we play. And what about you? Which of these 15 games had the biggest impact on your life? Or which title from 15 years ago do you think is missing here and that everyone should play right now? Drop your list in the comments. Let's keep the memory of these classics alive.